camera is started. Today is September 14th, 2022. I'm the interviewer Kevin Yee. We're here in the Minnesota Veterans Home in Minneapolis, and today I'm here with Mr. Lloyd Vollmer, who is a veteran of the Marine Corps. So thank you a ton for coming today, Mr. Vollmer. Can you start by telling me where and when you were born?
Well, I was born on a farmhouse nearly center Minnesota, Leesore County, straight south of here. Just born in December 10th, 1928.
And who are your parents and what did they do?
Roy and Merle Vollmer were my parents. Lived on a farm.
So in your book here, you just have like a lot of stories about growing up. Do you want to share a few of those?
Well, I went to country school, which I think, I said, if everybody had to go to a country school today, we'd have a different world we're living in. I used to hunt and trap around the lake, and the schoolhouse was on the lake. And I'd come into the school and stand my .22 rifle in the entryway to the school, and I never took the shells out of that gun. I mean, there's no need to it. Nobody ever heard of anybody ever shooting anybody. I mean, it was unbelievable in those days. You never heard anybody ever shooting anybody. And I was thinking if you did that today, they'd put you in jail. But I went to country school for 8 years. I went to Lee Center High School for 4 years. Graduated the day I graduated from high school. I joined the Marine Corps. I didn't tell my dad. I told my mother. I knew he wanted me to stay on the farm and farm, but I decided I wanted to join the Marine Corps. I had 4 days before I had to go, and I always wanted to go to Canada. So I started hitchhiking, and I hitchhiked all the way to Canada. I crossed the bridge into Canada, and I got about halfway across the bridge, and I'm in Canada, so I turned around and started walking back to International Falls. And the guy from Canada hollered at me and said, "Hey, you, where the hell are you going?" I said, "I'm going home." He said, "You can't do that." He says, "You got to come over here and register." I said, "I'm going home. I always wanted to go to Canada, and I went to Canada, and now I'm going home." And he laughed. He says, "Go ahead and go." I hitchhiked home. So 4 days, 2 or 3 days later, I got on a plane and flew to San Diego, California. We went to boot camp at Marine boot camp out there. I got out of boot camp and I came home. I had a 10-day leave, and I got transferred from there to Quantico, Virginia, a heavy equipment mechanic. So I was at Quantico, Virginia for 4 years. I got 3 years actually, and then I got extended for a year when the Korean War broke out. And I told you the story how I got to go to Korea. All my outfit went over there and come back. They were all shot to hell. And I thought, boy, am I ever glad I didn't go to Korea. Yeah. So, but it's been a life full of, and the book will tell you, my whole life has just been one on the edge of always something happening. Close calls all the time. I drove semi for a while, school bus, had a bunch of close calls. We've been doing that. That's in there too. I think you'll enjoy reading the book.
Yeah. So I'll just backpedal a bit to how you got into the Marine Corps. You said that your dad didn't want you to join.
Well, in those days, you raised a family. They would turn the farm over to you as a kid, and then they would go into town and retire. The kids would take over the farm, and their kids would be born, and they would run the farm. That's what they used to do years ago. my dad was expecting that I would take over the farm and run the farm. And I didn't want to. I wanted to go to join the Marine Corps, so I enlisted without his knowledge. And I told my mother, and so it was pretty upset when he found out I joined the Marine Corps. And later on, went along with it.
Yeah. How did all your siblings feel, and your mother too?
My siblings?
Yeah.
Well, what?
About you joining the Marines.
I didn't have any kids when I joined the Marine Corps.
Your siblings, so your brothers and sisters.
I had brothers. I had one brother who was younger, and 2 older sisters, and 1 sister younger, and their names are in the book there. Anyway, they didn't know it. They didn't care. Everybody kind of went their own way, you know. Nobody did everything. Everybody had to do certain things.
Yeah. So after you did the trip to Canada, you went straight to boot camp, right?
Do what?
You went straight to boot camp after the trip to Canada?
Yes. Yeah, the next day I had to go to camp.
Yeah.
So.
And what was boot camp like? Do you remember some of the things you did there?
It was hell as far as I'm concerned. They treated you like crap, and they didn't get anything wrong. They treated you like hell. I remember one time we were marching there. So, we platoons, we'd march around the parade ground, marching. And there was a guy, he couldn't smoke, and when they had the smoking lamp was lit, it was the only time you could smoke.
Yeah.
And so it was a little Mexican kid marching ahead of me, and he lit up a cigarette, and we were in the middle of the platoon, and he lit the cigarette, he was smoking, and it's marching.
Yeah.
And somehow the wind changed a little bit or something, but the platoon leader could smell the smoke, and he said, "Platoon halt, platoon halt." So we stopped, and he went down through the platoon, sniffing like this, for a cigarette. And I looked down, and there between my legs lay the cigarette.
Oh.
He come up to me. He knew I didn't smoke. He
Yeah.
come up to me, and there lay the cigarette. All right, come out. Vollmer, come with me. Private Vollmer, come with me. I had to go out of the platoon and with my M1 rifle, and I had to run around the platoon, yelling, "I am a shitbird," while they marched clear across the parade field. "I am a shitbird," and I had to do that
Yeah.
for smoking. And that night, I waited till the little Mexican guy went in the shower to shower. And I went in right behind him. When he turned around, I hit him right in the gut, just as hard as I could hit him. And I was a pretty strong guy. Being a farmer, I had wrists like you can believe, were a hustle. I hit him in the gut, and down he went like a ton of brick. And I turned around, and there stood the sergeant. He said, "Now I know who smoked today," didn't I? He says to me, "Now I know who was smoking today." That's all he said to me.
Yeah.
And the guy turned out to be a pretty good friend of mine, but ended up taking care of him.
Yeah.
I never smoked, and I could afford cigarettes, so I never smoked and never have. And after I got out of the service, I working at Northern State Power. I did some other stuff too. Other jobs I had, but I'm trying to think about something I did that. Mind does what really can be do.
Yeah. So was that how you and the guy who was smoking first met? Was that like your first interaction with each other?
What's that?
Was that how you and the guy who was smoking first met?
Well, I knew him, but I knew who he was, but the first interaction we had with the guy.
Yeah.
But I taught him a lesson anyway to not do that.
Did any of your drill instructors stand out to you?
Any what?
Any of your drill instructors?
Do what?
Did they stand out to you in any way?
Not really. They treated everybody pretty much the same. They had a routine that we had to go through, you know, they had to train us to march.
Yeah.
And whatever. But I was always a good shot. I wrote an article in there about my shooting. I was such a hell of a good shot. I could shoot pheasants with a .22 rifle on the fly. And I was that good. And I always was a good shot. So I fired one of the higher scores at the boot camp they ever fired at the rifle range. and I was, when I went to Quantico, I was on the rifle team at Quantico. And I was bullseye, 10 bullseye. I shot at one of the few guys at the boot camp that was ever there. At 1,000 yards, I put 10 bullseye in a prone position laying on the ground. And they said they had, this guy stopped the fire, and he said, this guy has fired the highest score, 1,000 yards, that I have ever seen, and I've been here for years.
Yeah. I
want you to know that this guy can really shoot. That was one of my favorites. I was always a good shot.
Yeah.
But
what do you think was like the hardest part of the boot camp?
The hardest part? I guess they put you through things. I always felt were kind of foolish. Make you do stuff, you know, and they treat you like shit because that's one they try to teach you to learn to take you. The biggest thing they were trying to make you learn is to take orders. You did what they told you. Yeah. And if you didn't do that in the service, they were in trouble. So they taught everybody to take orders, and that was the biggest thing. So some of the stuff that they did to us, I could understand, was to try to make us take orders and obey orders. But it was tough. Camp was tough. I made good Marines out of guys. There was a lot of people that never made it through boot camp. They just couldn't take it, and they didn't want them in the service. They didn't want you there. So if you could make it through boot camp, they didn't want you there. They'd kick you out. They didn't need them in the service. So.
And this was only like a few years after World War II, right?
World War, that was Korean War. Let's see, how was that? Korean War was before the Second World War. The Second World War, I was in this. Korean War was, it was before the Second World War. And the North Korea came in. China came into North Korea. We went in there and drove them back into China. It was a hell of a war. The bad part of that is they didn't have the clothing and they didn't have the materials that they needed to fight a winter war. Yeah, they sent them over there with high pants and stuff. A lot of guys froze to death. Fingers were froze and stuff. Hands came back, they were froze. I had some friends that came back when I was in camp, or there driving the ambulance. I had some of my buddies came back from Korea and they were shot to hell, and they got out of the service, of course. But I was sure as hell glad I didn't go.
I'll just backpedal a bit. So after boot camp got finished, where did you go?
Well, right after boot camp, they sent me to El Toro, California to go to heavy equipment training school.
Yeah.
And I went through a training school to become a mechanic. I had that ability because I worked on the farm, I worked on equipment and stuff all the time.
Yeah.
So I was a good mechanic. And that's where I went to. I got out of El Toro. It was a 6 weeks boot camp. Came home on leave, and then they sent me to Quantico.
And what was your specific job that you had?
Heavy equipment?
Yeah.
Well, all I did was repair heavy equipment. They had in a service, they got a lot of heavy equipment. I mean,
Yeah.
heavy equipment's caterpillars, shovels, backhoes, everything that they use in service. Build roads and whatever with.
Mm-hmm.
All of that heavy equipment. That's what I worked on.
Yeah. So what were those first few days in California like? What do you remember about the experience in general?
Boot camp?
Heavy equipment training in California.
Oh, it's like going to school again, all over again. Another training school. They showed you how to operate on all equipment, you had to learn how to operate it, and then you learn how to the mechanics of it, and you learn how to tear the mechanics apart and fix it. So yeah, it's quite interesting. And I was a good mechanic. But we had several guys in our outfit. There was 9 of us in the heavy equipment outfit in Quantico. And we had a master sergeant who was a tremendous mechanic. He was in charge.
And so, after that training school in California, where did you go next?
Went to Quantico, Virginia.
Yeah.
That was my base that they sent me to. This is before the Korean War.
Yeah.
So I was 6 days to go for discharge, and I had met my future wife when I was home on leave, and we were planning on getting married when I got out of the service. And so I had 6 days to go, and I was going to be out, and the Korean War started. That's when he shipped us over. So it was all we did was work in heavy equipment every day. It was weekends we had off. Yeah, so one weekend I had to stand in equipment duty. That's the weekend I stood duty when they had the ambulance test.
And what's the story behind like the ambulance driver test and that stuff?
What do you mean?
You mentioned how you became an ambulance driver by accident, sort of.
Yes.
Yeah. So what's the story behind that?
Well, when I went to when I got transferred to Naval Retraining Command at Norfolk, Virginia, it was a naval brig, largest naval brig on the East Coast, and they needed an ambulance driver in case they had somebody to go to an ambulance. They needed a driver to haul the patients to the hospital at Portsmouth. So I took the ambulance out when I got there. I drove around Norfolk with the sirens going and red lights because I had to learn how to drive it. I had never driven one. So, but we had a situation there that happened at the base. we went in on weekends. Was standing duty, and we all went to mess hall. And we got back to the barracks, and we all started getting sick. And even me started puking. I didn't do so bad. I didn't. But, so they called the mess sergeant who was off for the weekend, and he says, "What's going on? Everybody's getting sick." He said, "Well, I'll come out and see what's going on." So he was coming out there. Well, in the meantime, he's coming out there. The second shift come off. There's 3 shifts, 3 8-hour shifts. Second shift come off, and they went to mess hall and had sandwiches. They told them not to eat the sandwiches, so they didn't have any sandwiches. All they had was coffee, and they came into the barracks, and most of the guys that I had hauled to the Portsmouth were mildly sick, but not too bad. But this second batch came off, and I was in the barracks sick myself, and they started getting sick. And I'm telling you, you can't believe the puke in the place. Everybody was sick. So they told me to start hauling them to Portsmouth. I worked at the hospital right away. I loaded 8 of them in the ambulance, and I used this hose to wash the ambulance out. That's how filthy it was. Yeah. Anyway, I was hauling over the Portsmouth to the hospital. They were terrible sick. Some of them died. Well, they didn't eat any sandwiches, so what in the hell caused this sickness? And this mess sergeant come in and said, "Well, I know what it is. I always sterilize the coffee with live water, and I must have forgot to drain them." He thought it was funny. He started laughing. He didn't think it was funny because they busted him apart from his master sergeant. Anyway, they had to drain the coffee afterwards, and we wash them out and clean them up. That was why everybody was getting sick.
Yeah.
And we almost lost some of them. I'm sure that if they would have, he'd have been court-martialed. That was one of the big experiences I had at Quantico Marine Grace.
So what was an average day like for you when you were at Virginia or other bases?
Well, the bugles would sound in the morning for the alarm clock going off at 6 o'clock in the morning. We get up, go have breakfast, go to work at 7:30. Noon we'd break for lunch for an hour. Go back at 1 o'clock, we'd go back work till 4:30. Clean up, have supper, and spend your evenings. Write letters or whatever. It was really kind of a draft life. We didn't get to do a lot of things. We didn't have a lot of activities that we could do. Yeah. I did get to go to, I bought a car. I did get to go to Washington, D.C. on Liberty a lot. Learned to be a good roller skater. So, otherwise, by the way, I was, 3 of us big one day. There was a guy, Lieutenant Colonel, come in with his blush dress blues on, right? We were working on the heavy equipment, come into our building, and he pointed to me and 2 other guys. He said, "You go up to the barracks, shower and clean up and get your dress blues on. I'll pick you up in 45 minutes. Didn't say where the hell we were going or anything. So we did. We dropped our wrenches and went and washed up and cleaned up, got dress blues on, and he came up and got in the car, started for Washington, D.C. I said, "What the hell are we going up there for?" Well, he says, "You guys are going to be MPs at Harry Truman's inauguration today." He's being inaugurated. So they gave us 45 pistols, no shells. I stood from here to you, from Harry Truman when he was inaugurated as president.
Oh, wow.
That was quite an treatment. Yeah, I'll never forget it. Honestly, I always thought he was a great president. Things like that happen. I always remember that.
Yeah. So, what surprised you the most about military life in general?
Oh, I think that they do a lot of things that they don't do today in boot camp. They don't treat these guys that way anymore.
Yeah.
They're a wholly different life today. The military was a whole difference, you know, in 1950, 51. It was entirely different than it is today.
Yeah.
Service is different. But I don't know, I got to do some things. I remember I used to go out to the airport on weekends when my weekends are off. I like to fly, and they'd have guys who would come out to the airport and take a plane just for training and just fly it around. And they had the SNJ naval trainers, which I just seen at Fayetteville when I was on my trip this weekend down to Fayetteville, Arkansas. My daughter and I went down to see one of my other daughters, and they have a space museum down there, and they have all the old airplanes, like they have 1,000 of them there. You can go and look at them. I see an SNJ naval trainer, the guy was giving us a tour. I said, "Oh, I remember that plane, I flew it once." He says, "You did?" I said, "Yeah." I remember one time I went down to on a Saturday morning, went down to the airport, and there was a guy going on training on an SNJ naval trainer. It's a two-seater. You see, the guy sits ahead of you, and there's a guy sits right behind you. So they sit in front of behind him. They don't set it, instead of sitting side by side like you do in a lot of places. This was, the guy's here, and there's a guy right behind him.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there, and the stick is here, right here, just like this, between my legs. And we're flying to Cherry Point, North Carolina, on a training mission. And I see him go like this with the stick, and he wanted like this, and I looked down, and the stick was shaking. What the hell, he must want me to fly it. So I took hold of the stick, and I'm flying the damn airplane. And I flew the plane for 10 miles. And he shook, wiggled the stick at him, this, so I took my hand off the stick, and he turned it upside down. I'll never forget. I was strapped to the end of the plane, but I got to fly a plane, and I never flew one since, and never flew one before.
That's pretty neat. So, do you remember like the other soldiers that were in your unit? Or what was it like serving with them?
Oh, I made some friends. I've got a good friend of mine in South Dakota, Dwayne Apple, we call him Jack Rabbit. He was a real good friend of mine, and we got to be friends. And after we got out of service, he opened a body shop in Texas, and he got a letter from his wife that told me Jack Rabbit died, passed away, and he'd gotten polyneuropathy in his legs. It wasn't shortly after that I started having trouble with my legs. I went to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
They give me an exam, and they says, "I think we got polyneuropathy in your legs." And I said, "Well, I had a good friend that died from it." And he says, "What caused it?" And I said, "I have no clue what caused it." Well, they did some research, and they checked and found out that our whole outfit, 7 guys that worked in heavy equipment in Quantico, all of them were dead with me. They all passed away from the same thing. And so they got to check, and they found out that there's a solvent that you wash your parts in,
Yeah.
and heavy equipment.